Hello Pistons fans, David Mayo from MLive here with another video response to one of your Ask David questions this week. It was a big week for the Pistons. They drafted Henry Ellenson in the first round of the draft, Michael Benajay from Syracuse in the second round, and they'll see some of those players coming up this week in Summer League in Orlando, also free agency opening this week. So big transition period for the roster, and in that look ahead to 2016-17, our friend Ishmael this week asks if there are any players on the current Pistons roster who could not be coached up into being decent defenders, assuming they have the intelligence and the desire to defend, and whether there's a player on this year's roster who Stan Van Gundy would trade primarily because of defensive deficiencies to upgrade the roster. I would say, in a word, no. The answer is no. I don't think there's a player on the roster who can't improve into a decent defender if he wants to do it and knows how to do it. I think the Pistons fairly clearly break down into groups of defenders, have plus defenders like Andre Drummond and Aaron Baines is a plus defender, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Stanley Johnson, Marcus Morris. Those are guys who fairly consistently, night in, night out, give you something that you can expect to hang your hat on the defensive end. There's kind of a middle tier there with Tobias Harris and Reggie Bullock when Bullock was in the rotation, and then you have a small group, I would say, negative defenders in Reggie Jackson, Jody Meeks, and Darren Hilliard. Of course, Caldwell-Pope covers most of Jackson's deficiencies by guarding point guards when other teams have a particularly threatening point guard on the floor. As for Meeks and Hilliard, or Meeks and Bullock, the two guys who are most likely to be traded, I'm not sure. I would say, any day now, I would expect Jody Meeks to be traded, making more than $6 million this year, and he's missed more than 100 games in 2 years. Reggie Bullock, another guy. Though he was on a value contract and did produce to a great extent late in the season, another guy who potentially could be packaged into a larger deal, though again he's only making a bit more than $2 million this year. However, it'd be a surprise if the Pistons didn't try to make a move involving one of those players, most notably Meeks, and I'm not sure I could characterize either one of them as being because of defensive deficiencies. If Meeks were traded, it would be more because of expiring contract, didn't work out, couldn't stay on the floor, take your pick. A number of reasons. Open a roster spot for Benajay. They have a glut of shooting guards now, but by the same token, it's probably not coincidence that of the five guys who identify as shooting guards or play extensively at shooting guard from last year's roster, including Stanley Johnson, who played there extensively along with Hilliard, Meeks, Bullock, and Caldwell-Pope, that one of the negative defenders and one of the middling defenders are in that group that would be considered for a trade this summer. That said, the Pistons have high hopes for Hilliard, including on the defensive end, that he will improve there. And this is a team that when it's engaged and when they're playing actively with their feet and getting their hands involved in the defense and getting in passing lanes and doing some things to compensate for not being always great positional defenders, as long as they're engaged and active, this can look pretty good. It can look bad when they don't, but I don't think there's anyone on this team who is above repair defensively. Thanks for the question, Ishmael. We'll be back next week from Summer League in Orlando with another video response to one of your Ask David questions.